The topic we're going to cover today is empowerment. And we're going to talk about empowerment in the right and wrong way. I feel, generally speaking, like most things in leadership, it's just very generic. Everyone thinks empowerment is like almost like a blunt hammer. You either apply it or you don't. And that is, of course, not true. And how we know is that you see it doesn't work. When I say it doesn't work, empowerment matters most when you really need it. As in, I looked up what the opposite of empowerment is, and according to ChatGPT, it's one of them is helplessness. So when you feel helpless is when you need the skills to see, can I get empowerment? And is that something that you can self-generate, or do you have to really rely on, external locus of controls, meaning I need somebody else to generate it for me. I need some other external event to generate it. Otherwise, I stay helpless. And that, of course, is no good. That is not called leadership. That's called, I don't know, maybe regular life. But so let's see. I had several topics. And of course, as I was running down, I feel like there's so much other cool stuff I want to cover. I'll just give you a quick sense. In my notes here, I have an interesting topic, which I think is worthy of a class somewhere, where focusing on the one thing rule. And the most common thing we tend to do is divide our attention. Dividing our attention is always a safer choice. And I think the Latin word or the root of decision is incision. Making a decision is actually making these bold cuts, as in making a choice that I'm going to reduce my options and choices. I'm going to, concentrate my bet, my focus. And so this notion of focusing on the one thing rule, where every increasing bullet point that supports that one thing you choose to focus on, you get an increasing return in each unit of effort. And I think for most of us, we tend to feel safer trying a lot of things, just hedging our bets. And the hedging your bets is not only is it actually a more challenging strategy, it's a short-term feel good, long-term you rarely get returns, you rarely even get remembered. You yourself will not even remember your own strategy because you're trying anything and hoping something works. And there's a window for exploration, but most of us struggle to have the decisive skills to actually make incisions to focus on that one thing rule. So there's a class there I feel that's interesting. There's a recent study that just came out, I think by ChatGPT. They analyzed all these different usage stats for 700 million users on ChatGPT. 49%, by the way, that's almost 50% of the usage of ChatGPT is seeking advice for decisions. Gone to ChatGPT by 700 million people, almost 50% of the usage is trying to use it to get guidance, advice on making a decision. So that's an interesting point that could do a whole class on. Another topic that's interesting was a lot of predictions of what's happening in the marketplace work. A very kind of strong theme is that over 50% or more of many employees will not be needed by most organizations. That's a strong metric that I've seen range from 50% tends to be in the lower end. I've seen stats that are much higher, but it was talking about how many employees, many people, they have two challenges. One is not wanting to reskill or unable to reskill. So there's a combination of the two, and why the two matter is those two really do play on each other. You have to really want something, the whole notion of being self-driven. But then there are skills you have to learn to be able to go and navigate the chaos, the uncertainty, making decisions. But you can't have one without the other, because you might have the skills, but if you don't want to, you'll see it's just a lot easier just to not make decisions, not to actually, even move, just sit still. But on the flip side, there might be people who really want to, but have no idea how.
Right.
And the two feed into each other over time, because confidence and momentum, are kind of miraculous things in that it just takes anybody who says it can't do anything, you start to believe in yourself. as you get progress. But lack of progress tends to have the flip side. We get stuck and can be stuck what feels like forever, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the whole, if it feels impossible, why bother, right? I forget what the phrase was. Craig, you might remember, this came from the Air Force, right? It's perception equals, oh gosh, now I can't remember, behaviors, anyways, but the point is if you feel like it can't be done, then the behaviors follow, you don't do it, and so that you prove to yourself you can't do it. I think that's a big challenge.
Ray Dalio is biggest hedge fund in the world. He just recently was sharing this notion combined with a thought from Jeff Bezos from Amazon that not growing is the equivalent of being miserable and others feeling miserable around you as well. And yet to be able to grow, one of the most important things is you have to be able to tolerate being wrong. And if you don't mind being wrong on the way to being right, you'll learn a lot. And so another way Jeff Bezos said the same thing is to invent, as in to create, to invent. You have to have a willingness to repeatedly fail. If you have to be okay being wrong and being wrong many, many times. And Jeff Bezos then said that if you don't have a willingness to repeatedly fail, you're gonna be careful not to invent. As in, if you don't have a willingness to repeatedly fail, you're gonna be careful not to invent. And I thought that was interesting language, that it's careful to not invent. And that notion of, once again, playing safe. So not the topics we're gonna cover today, but
just whetting your appetite for maybe next
some
week.
Tangential topics that we could go into. I'm gonna share my screen because I think this topic is pretty interesting. I have a 11-year-old that feels like a 13-year-old that sometimes lectures me like she's 70, but this is not my daughter. It's a random picture on the internet. But the notion of empowerment, and I think empowerment is a very misunderstood word. It's a very misunderstood practice. And I feel the remnants of the industrial age, like most things on leadership, most things on how to train human beings, are applied very bluntly, right? You use like affirmations, certain words, you go, exercise. There's a lot of like kind of focus on the body because the mind is so difficult to change. Yet I would tell you, if you never get to the mind, none of it will matter. The mind is the most important thing to change. And so to recognize how important that is. But so we'll go into empowerment, and I feel the nuance kind of dove into here was separating the concept of empowerment differently for an optimist versus a pessimist. And an optimist, people who generally tend to believe things will work out, versus pessimists who generally tend to think things won't work out. There is never 100%. So on one hand, we will all need the skills on both ends. However, there will be one that will give you far higher returns because we tend to be imbalanced on one side. So we'll kind of fall into showing you both sides, but if you work on both sides, you're going to get no results.
So before we do this, actually, put into the chat if you're an optimist or a pessimist.
Oh, yeah.
I self-identify yourself, right? So that when we see the questions that come up, we kind of know, because it is a challenging, right? So decide now, right? I mean, some of you might say I'm a realist. You know what I mean? Yes, I think we're all kind of realistic. Like we want to.
Don't put the little wimpy, like I'm both in the middle. I'm perfectly balanced human being.
I am definitely a pessimist, but I recognize I have places in my life I'm very optimistic. So I think, just in general, we're going to skew towards one element, actually, one side. It's not that I don't have optimism. Without question, I do. It's just certain areas of my life, but the overwhelming vibe.
So there's a couple of ways to look at it as you score yourself. One is think about when you are awake 7 days a week, right? What is the super majority? Super majority usually is a term in accounting. It's like 67%, 2/3 or more. And the reason is rarely are people truly right at that 50-50, 51 balance. Yeah. So you're trying to identify the side of you that's on the super majority, pessimist or optimist. Another way to look at it is think about yourself under stress or under duress. Physical is the easiest. So when you, don't get good sleep, when you are starving, when you are hangry, right? Tell me what you are then. Or when you feel mentally like, like just a tornado hit your head, meaning everything is spiraling going wrong. What is the default that comes to your head that others see, right?
Okay.
Final litmus test, if you really don't know, is if we asked your spouse, your parents, your children, what would they say, right? Just better pick one, what's viscerally. So, and it's important because that self-awareness is very difficult.
I'm just thinking if we played a drinking game, I feel we would win the Pessimists, but that's just my,
Why,
just how I
why would
feel.
they win?
Well, I've got Krista, I have Tim, I have Eileen, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Just based on
She-
drinking
Yeah,
skills.
but
But it's kind of weird to think a pessimist would think they would win the drinking game.
See, that's an area I'm a big optimist. Greg said that's pretty optimistic. It's true. See, there's areas I would consider myself very arrogant.
And as I said,
optimistic.
What percentage of the 7 days a week are you playing drinking?
Yes.
So that's where
Like 0.01%.
statistics, we say an outlier data point, we throw it out.
Yeah.
Right? So Megan's optimism in winning drinking games, we throw it out as a data point. Okay, so when I typed in what is the opposite of empowerment, there's a whole bunch of blah, blah, blah that came out, disempowerment, oppression, domination, right? But focusing really in on this specific component of helplessness. And I highlighted key parts here. Feeling unable to influence outcomes. That notion of like, it's not me, like the world's deciding, doing stuff, and I can only be a voyeur or a passenger. I'm not the driver of this. So that helpless feeling of like it's happening with absolutely no ability for me to influence the outcome, make the outcome different. Versus empowerment is very connected to the notion of high agency. Empowerment can give you confidence, confidence alone. There's a lot of false confidence. So we don't want to get into kind of all the fake and false confidence out there, but empowerment, true empowerment shows up in someone where when nobody's watching, you just watch what they do. They just don't give up. And then you're like, I don't know why you keep trying. No one's responding. And when you ask them what's in their head, the stories, the narrative is a story and narrative of empowerment. Now, there are a lot of people who are short-term empowered. And then after having gone through the initial honeymoon, they no longer are empowered and go back to being helpless. So I sort of caution against the first time promotion, the first job, the first friend you meet, or the first date you go on, you're like, wow. And then the second date already you're in helplessness mode. So just kind of watch you want to get the score, the truest score, not the honeymoon score. So removing agency, internal state of helplessness. I like the definition of the internal state. It's in my head, in my mind, that I feel helpless, that I don't make a difference, that I am not able to change the outcome, influence the outcome. That's helplessness. So the opposite, which I hope to give you a nugget of wisdom here, is how do I feel empowered, where I feel like, wait, I can totally make a difference. Me today, by the things I do and the things I choose to go in action, can start to change what happens. And that's a pretty cool feeling when you get there. So I created two sections. One's for optimists. I just randomly put some red colors in. And yes, they all spell the word piss, but I did that on purpose on both. So, and the point being, there is no 100% optimist and there is no 100% pessimist. We've done a lot of studies over the years using data on my mind apps and as people self-tracked and journaled over a decade plus. And everyone is imbalanced. It was closer to like 60-40 or even 50-50 than people realized over time, but your perception of yourself. And so the signals you send out usually tends to show a clear bent towards an imbalance of being an optimist or an imbalance of being a pessimist. So this one is for the pissy optimists, right?
I was gonna say, it's making me think about all the work we did on self-driven, right? Because if you're self-driven to do something that's difficult, you're obviously so I'm speaking as a pessimist, I'm optimistic that it's gonna work out. So whatever that thing, remember we all did that exercise if you weren't with us, but we did a whole exercise of there are areas in your life where you're extremely self-driven, motivated to do something difficult, and you'll keep doing it in the long run, whether it's, getting healthy or gardening or whatever the thing that you do, or house, events that you do, you might dinner parties, like the things that you do and you do really well and you keep doing, you get better at, you're self-driven, which means you're optimistic that I'm gonna keep getting better at this, or you wouldn't continue to do it, right? So even the pessimist will feel empowered in certain areas of their lives. To your point, on my mind, we're more 50-50, but we identify, and maybe it's in the majority of our life, we'll feel like not empowered, right? We'll feel more, I don't know if the word victim is the right
I don't know if
thing,
this is
but-
the right way to translate what I think I heard
Yeah.
you say. We all have optimism in our lives, but when you feel like, the fixed mindset, the Carol Dweck growth versus fixed mindset,
Yeah,
the fixed mindset view is, well, it's only on these things.
right.
It's only on workouts, or it's
Right.
only on cooking, or it's only on vacation. And
Mhm.
not realizing that sort of like jail cell of saying I'm only on this is in your mind done by yourself. And the confirmation bias nature of finding more and more data points to show that I can only be optimistic on this and not anything else is actually a self-created prison. And so this notion of optimist, I always think
Yeah.
about years ago, we spent time with this woman, Nancy Schulman, who was one of the top educators in early learning. And I love this example she'd always use about watching children on monkey bars. And if you ever go to monkey bars, it's like doing a dead hang, but as a child, since you're super light, it should be easier.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to get across. And you will find that one kid who literally the hand is getting cut and almost bleeding at times, but will not give up and just keeps trying. To me, that's what I call optimist. That's the belief, despite every data point showing fail, 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 right? And you're getting weaker, it's harder, but why do they keep pushing? And so to recognize, I don't know why one kid would do that, and then the other kid tries it once and says, I can't. But to realize that that's a learnable skill. And so can I create that monkey bar, right? Never giving up, hands being cut and bleeding optimism on things that matter to me in my life. And can I build that skill? So despite how difficult it might be, or how often I fail, that notion of, if you don't mind being wrong, right? Repeatedly failing. It is an absolute skill that's important to learn, probably more than ever before. So for optimists, real quick, Mark Brackett is the head of this emotional learning team at Yale University. We've met Mark several times. He had a new book that literally just came out, I think, this week or last week. He sent us a note asking us if we'll consider doing a book launch for him. So we might bring him in and kind of go with this. And the first book was also tied to feelings, but he's one of the top people who has just researched feelings and understanding emotion. And timed with this new book, there was a New York Times article I just pulled up and kind of looked at it real quick, 5 simple steps to calm yourself down. And this is really important for optimists, that when you're feeling something, right, as in your emotional radar blips, over time, you start to recognize when is that blip, the emotional feeling, significant enough to notice, significant enough to say, wait a second, my entire system body is giving me a signal that something's important here. Now, that doesn't mean it's always important, but it's giving you enough to notice. And what tends to happen for optimists is and that's kind of the side I am imbalanced in, we tend to believe negative thoughts, negative emotions are like poison. It's almost like if you told me, I've got anthrax in a vial, COVID in a vial, the flu in a vial, right? Do you want to sniff it? Do you want to have it open-ended, evaporating around you, right? And maybe even just stick my finger in there, taste it, drink it. Like that's literally what negative events can feel like. They take my mojo, they take my energy mentally, physically. And so optimists tend to believe over time, if I can just not look at it, right? I might not even smell it. It's even though it's evaporating in the room, right? If I can just kind of ignore it, I can operate as if it doesn't exist, right? And, as most things that you kind of see that are negative and you let it sit and marinate, I mean, it's like shit just fermenting, just disgusting and bad. Point being, I like how Mark Brackett points out, as you ignore these feelings, it actually gets bigger. Now, a lot of times an optimist will convince themselves it's not true, right? Because they can operate and someone will be like, wait, you don't notice the big pile of shit in your office? And they'll be like, what pile of shit? They can actually learn to tune it out to ignore it. But their body knows, their mind knows. And the minute someone walks in, right, and says, what the hell is that shit? And they'll say, what? No, ignore it. And you'll see how rapidly and viscerally they will defend ignoring it. And it becomes a taboo topic. It becomes something that they know exists. It's actually growing, but they're acting like it's less and less, even though in the mind, it's growing bigger and bigger. So the suppression of it actually makes it bigger. So keep this in mind because it matters a lot. So I'm taking a framework. Sorry, I meant to animate more. That two, imagine the two's not
So
there.
Greg is saying, sorry, Greg, I don't know if I can read what Greg was saying. He written down from Kobe, who's an optimist. Kobe Bryant acknowledged his fears rather than denying them to understand and control them. By being still and recognizing fear as a temporary emotion, you can then question its source and unpack it. The process allows you to see that fear often stems from imagination. It helps you choose how to respond to it rather than being controlled by it, ultimately giving you power over your emotional responses, leading to courage. Why don't you just brought up fear, Greg? Sorry, I was just thinking, remember the fear and frustration work we did? Sorry, I have a different thought. Mentioning Kobe Bryant and fear, acknowledging it.
So it's interesting. I mean, Greg mentioning Kobe Bryant. There was a video I saw on Elon Musk, right? And I am sure for those of you who are pessimists, you consider sometimes like an Elon Musk crazy, right? And it was like a 15-second video where he said, fear, right? Fear, you can always attack fear by looking at it straight on, and then it disappears. And people are like, yeah, that's not how it works. It must be nice to be the richest guy in the world and say that. But this notion of looking fear straight on, but then he said something interesting afterwards. When you look at fear through your side eye, it grows. As in how to look at it directly. But if you see it in your periphery, if you kind of look at it on the side, it grows. That same theme. And I think whether it's the Kobe's, the Jocko, or like all these other like people who literally seem like almost insane human beings who just kind of charge against anything scary, there is a muscle to learn that fear can be real. However, if you cannot face it, it actually grows. It dominates your mind, and it is like mold and virus that is overtaking the real estate in your brain. And over time, you won't know why you're not as sharp, why you're not as agile, why you don't have as much mental capacity. It's because fear, not looked at directly, does that. So I'm going to use this pie chart. This pie chart was one that we were given years ago by this really well-known psychologist, Jim Lear, who written like almost 20 different well-known books and whatnot. But it was talking about, this is how the human brain operates. If you think of what's happening in our mind, and say like you love the container store or whatnot, think of your brain having three large containers. One container, right, is the size of like, think of 50% of your brain is storing your memories, the past. Another part of the container is storing your predictions of the future. Future outlook does not mean that like you're a tarot card reading future. No, it just is your predictions of the future. And then only 10% of your brain is actually being used for the present. So when you think of what you have to do, be fully engaged, get things done. But this is just the, generally speaking, the percentage breakout of how our brain is operating. Okay, 50% past, 40% future, 10% present. Now, I put up here 2, not 3. This is a really important kind of like just generic lesson of when you try to remember 3 things, you often will find it's the same as remembering nothing. Anytime someone tries to memorize 3 steps or 3 things, you will see over time, it just doesn't stick. And the difference of trying to figure out what are the 2 things, not 3, has such a profound impact on your ability to remember something, to recall something, that drop in a single, this is the idea of incision, decide to actually cut out, sacrifice, right? Like something in order to then illuminate or double, triple my efforts on the things I do pick. 2, not 3. Great rule of thumb. So I'm going to focus on the 3 parts of the brain here. And for optimists, the key here of the 2, not 3 starts at what you're choosing to X out. And the red is where I X'd the past. Optimists stay optimists because they keep replaying stories of how heroic they were, how great they were, how amazing they felt, how they felt like everyone was putting them on their shoulders and whatnot. And that exact thing is what leads to the distortion. Even though something may have happened once, and even though sometimes it's like 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, you might replay it as if it happened last week. You might replay it like it happened hundreds of times. And that distortion, retold, eventually some parts of the story, if not a huge part of it, is no longer actually true. Like maybe it wasn't as sunny as you think it was. And maybe the applause wasn't really even for you. And maybe your muscles weren't quite as chiseled and your brain wasn't quite as sharp. And maybe it was pure dumb luck, but you might remember it and retell it as if like you had a life strategy and whatnot. But the point being, the past. For optimists, this is going to be a very difficult one, which is to kind of take the thing that you feel gives you mojo, talking about the stories of how great you've been and all these little nuanced details you love to tell, to drop that in order to master. So this is the drop that in order to master how to get empowered, focusing your effort on the other half of the brain. In this case, the 40% future outlook and 10% present. So the sequence will matter a lot. So first and foremost, and this is where for the optimists who hate the smell of shit and who hate anything negative, here is the key. Future outlook, even though I put green here, is not always about positive. If you have a one-sided view of the future, and your view of the future is things always work out, I have to tell you, like, that is stupid, right? Just, that's not possible. Life doesn't work out that way. Life is not set up where everything in the future goes your way. And so if you are walking around narrating that, believing that, telling other people that, you know what ends up happening over time? We have these things called RABs or red arrow behaviors. Other people who see concern, who see accidents, will struggle to tell you the truth because you refuse to see a world where things don't work out. And that's not the real world. So the imbalance sets you up that what you struggle to spend time in is the negative future outlook. And the negative future outlook, like most predictions, you get better at making predictions. The more reps you have in it and the more feedback you invite in it, and then making an iterative prediction over time, you get better and better. And so I put the word realistic downside. Realistic downside is a learned skill. So I should even put that in quotes because that's so much harder than people realize. Everyone's like, oh yeah, that's my realistic downside. No, most people actually suck at understanding how to actually figure out realistic downside. But as you get better and as you get the reps of actually looking at negative future outlook, no matter the situation, you have to be able to visualize it. You have to be able to explain it in detail to someone. And if you struggle to explain it in detail, it's a signal that you really do not have the muscle. It's like going in for a jog. If you go for a 5K run and you're out of breath, it means you're just not in shape. So you'll find that most optimists tend not to be in shape when it comes to negative future outlooks. And so realistic downside, visualize it, puzzle it, let it marinate, explain it, and you have to be able to sit in it. Sit in it until it loses its emotional power. Negative future outlooks for, especially for optimists, literally feel like hijackers of your mood and mojo. So when I think about it, spend time in it, I convince myself over time that that is the very thing makes me so depressed, so anxiety driven that I no longer have confidence. I no longer have mojo. I no longer can. And this is not true, because there is a level of power you can achieve if you yourself can be self-driven in not only seeing the different realistic downsides, visualizing it, explaining it to other people, that notion of being empowered as you understand the details of it, and then acceptance, as in you're okay with it. As in, if that happened, and that is possible, it is going to be awful, but I will be okay. It's not I will be great, because that's what the amateur, sort of, or the imbalanced optimist says. It'll work out, it'll be great. I'm like, no, it won't be great. It's going to suck. It's going to suck. It's going to be painful. But there's a notion of it will not end you. You will be okay. Once you get past 1, the goal is to go to 2. Everything, by the way, for both optimists and pessimists, is to get to the present time, because everything that happens in the present time is where the value will come. I was talking to our staff this Monday, talking about how many of us, where did I put, wallow in worry, or I can't remember what words I used. We are often wallowing, right? Hoping to get something right, hoping for things to get right, versus learning the skills to action to get right. I want to make sure, like, my actions, my decisions, my definitive steps, moves, things I say and do are the reasons things get right. That's a skill. But if you are sitting, waiting, wallowing, hoping, praying, and that's what you're doing, and that's all you're doing, it's not a skill. It's up to somebody else, and that's helplessness. So for the optimist here, going from 1 to 2, empowered. Once you can see the downside, right? As in, if you lose, it's going to be painful, but I'll be okay. You have to have that plan somewhere visible. You cannot do your old habit of hiding it somewhere and acting like, you know what, I did it, now I don't want to see it. You have to be able to have it in your side view. Once you looked at it directly and all that stuff, you can park it in the side, but somewhere where you can see it almost always. And I say almost always because eventually you don't have to do that, but in the beginning, it's like an addict, right? Optimists are addicts that believe negative, like, future predictions are like, poison. You can control your mind. We're actually able to control it, so you can see it. And what happens when you remove the secret nature of the bad that could happen? You will see your mind get lighter, mentally lighter. I mean, can you imagine a world as an optimist where you start to puzzle on your negative plan, right? Meaning, I have a negative downside. Oh, but randomly while doing something, I had an extra bullet point to put on the negative plan that could happen, or the negative prediction that could happen. And people are like, what? I thought you were an optimist. Yeah, no, but I forgot something, and I fill in that plan. That notion of it has a parking space. It has somewhere that it's been done, the exercise. And with that parking of that downside, I can focus on the upside. I can focus on all the energy to win, because, kind of to the point Mark Brackett had made, when you actually leave it hidden, suppress it, it actually grows. And it's hard to understand how much of our subconscious mind and how much of our mind share is being taken by the bad thing that could happen. So,
You know what's interesting about that? I'm just trying to think, because you're saying the 1, 2 is the future outlook. For optimists, it's saying stop thinking about the past. Try to stop thinking about because you're distorting heroics, however and you're not saying go into that and try to clean that out. You're saying spend the energy on the future, spend the energy on the realistic downside, right? Visualizing, explaining in detail, getting to a place where you accept it. And I was just thinking, so that you can focus in the present. But what you're saying is the future negative stuff is growing. The optimist just doesn't realize it, but it is growing, and it's taking up more of your mind share so that you can't stay in the present. And I think what ends up happening, so it's complicated, but I think what ends up happening, I'm not an optimist, but there's areas I am, as you're thinking about the negative outlook, the things that scare you a little bit, you spend more time in that, I can see how, like an addict, right? It would make you then want to think more about the past when you were awesome, right? Because it probably makes you feel crappy.
Right.
Now I feel crappy, right? So then I want to go back to the things that make me feel good. And so I think that's why, I think what you're saying is try to stop going into those heroics in the past. But I think that's the natural thing. And it's because that's the natural thing that's occurring as you try to go into some of the painful stuff that you might predict that you don't really want to talk about. Your brain is gonna say, let me balance that out. I don't feel good about that. Let me go back to
No,
some of the things that I
I mean,
did
one way
really
I look
well.
at it is, for an optimist, I know Chef Danny has kind of taught us a lot, like,
Yeah.
but one of the key things was stop taking Tylenol, Motrin, or Advil,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Stop taking an aspirin for everything, because it is destroying your
gut.
your microbiome. That's what it is. So,
Yeah.
and an optimist starts to look at what could happen negative in the future. The way they feel good, they pop a Motrin, which is basically going into the past and say, oh, remember the time when I was great? Remember
Yeah.
the time when I felt amazing?
We tell fun
Right?
stories of
And
like,
so-
awesome days.
That reaching into the past is like popping a few pills of Motrin, right?
That makes sense.
Short term, it might make the headache go away, but you are destroying your health.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
Short-term gain for, yeah.
think of it as a workout, a muscle. All right, should we go to the next one?
Yes.
For the pessimist, totally different one, which is why if you think empowerment is kind of one size fits all, absolutely not. All right, by the way, Stockdale Paradox. This is what Stockdale Paradox is. This was one of the most utilized frameworks, mental models for how to navigate uncertainty. The Stockdale Paradox, I mean, I don't know if those of you know, but Stockdale, to be honest, even though he says he's balanced, he was an optimist. The Stockdale Paradox is for optimists. This is exactly what it is, which is you actually believe, even though bad things could happen in the future, it will work out. And then I'm grounded in the reality of the present so I can focus and move. This is the Stockdale Paradox. The Stockdale Paradox, in hindsight, I really realize is built and meant for optimists. It is actually not meant for pessimists. So there's another framework that is meant for pessimists, but not Stockdale. For those of you who are pessimists, love Stockdale, I wonder it's screwing you up because it's the wrong one. Okay, pessimists. Once again, it's amazing. The PISS exists in all the words here, but so pissy pessimists, right? As opposed to pissy optimists. This was a random little tweet that I thought was interesting. So it says, proof that you are stronger than you ever thought. Right now, you might be in a situation that you think you won't survive, right? Right now, any of you could be in a situation where you're thinking, I won't survive, I won't make it. But 6 months ago, you were in a situation that you didn't think you'd survive. 2 years before that, you were in a situation you didn't think you'd survive. The point of this, and by the way, tweets are nice, but they kind of have wrong words at places. So I'm going to replace some of the words here. It said, you will always surprise yourself and you will always make it through. So I first want to say, will always is not a true statement, right? So that's what parents tell their young children and whatnot. So let's just be adults and be real. Will always is not a true statement. So as a pessimist, as you read this, and where you're going to turn off on this phrase is the words will always, and be like, this is bullshit.
God, you know it so well.
Okay. Make it through, right? Now this is interesting. Make it through is different than you made it through, right? Make it through versus you made it through. You cannot predict what the next 6 months will be. That is fortune telling, and nobody has perfect fortune telling skills. But the focus here for the pessimist is not the future, but it's looking backwards. 6 months ago, 2 years ago, remembering the level of detail of your negative prediction that you will not survive, you will not make it. Well, the truth is you're here right now, which means you made it through. And that matters. You made it through. So I'm going to go in a little bit more detail here because we obviously need more than that, but tweets are good, but they're kind of good as, you know. So 2, not 3. So here's a trade-off for pessimists. Ixnay, the future outlook, right?
No predictions.
Your addiction to Motrin, right, is to keep making predictions into the future. And I don't care if it's a positive prediction, but most of the time we all know the truth, which is mostly negative. Stop doing your addiction to Motrin, Advil, Bayer or whatever it is, and stop making predictions into the future. Okay? So that's the first part. And it's gonna be harder than you think. If you love Motrin, right, and you have it like vitamins every day, you're gonna feel the act of doing this almost feels like it's the right thing to do. It gives me relief, right? If I don't do it, it stays in my head and I need to get it out. Like, so your addiction to negative predictions in the future, you have to find a way to stop taking those pills, okay? So I kind of misanimated to fix it, so I'll never have time to fix it. Give me a sec.
So interesting, because the optimist is saying, stop thinking about the past heroic, and for the pessimist, stop thinking about the future bad stuff, right?
Not even stop.
Or stop making predictions
Yeah,
of what
just
could happen.
like,
Stop, trying to fortune.
yeah, and you know, people say, no, but like, I have to get it out of my head. I have to tell you what I'm thinking. I'm like, okay, like, I don't know who you're talking to, but for your own self and your own sanity, can you stop making predictions, right? I don't know if you've ever maybe seen movies or like kind of been to the casino, you see degenerate gamblers, right? A degenerate gambler is someone who is usually an optimist, who believes despite having lost fucking everything, they're gonna win maybe the next hand, right? Or the next slot machine could be my lucky draw that wins $1 million. There is an equivalent degenerate, I don't know what the
What
gambler is.
example you're gonna come up
Like,
with right now? I have no idea.
Instead of being a degenerate gambler, it's like a degenerate negative prediction maker, right? Like just every single thing. I'm gonna stub my
Like a
toe today,
psychic.
and then on top of it, we're gonna run out of my favorite salad dressing,
Like
and then the tea won't be hot, and then I'll burn my hand. And I mean, it's like you have a degenerate issue, right? Of looking at everything and making a prediction, it's not gonna work out. And some people say it's complaining, some people call it worrying, some people call it anxiety. I don't even call and care what you label it. Stop taking your fucking Motrin, right? If you're a pessimist, you're making negative predictions, you have to realize it is an addiction, it is a sickness, it's a disease. So can we learn to maybe try to dial that down? Trust me, zero is never gonna be realistic, but to recognize I have a problem, right? And the more I spend energy there into my predictions, I am not going to put mind share into the green boxes. So I'm going to hopefully convince you to put a little more time, right? A trade-off of, okay, I'm going to dial that one down, a feed increasingly in the past versus the present. So the order, once again, matters. So in the past, instead, I would love for you in detail to visualize and explain to yourself, to other people, your past negative predictions. 6 months ago, 2 years ago, in excruciating detail, what are some of the predictions that you had? On what? Everything, right? Because you know, if you're a degenerate, you're just good at doing this on everything. So talk about whether it's your health, talk about your friends' health, parents, children, business, job, bonus, I don't know, the world, politics, the country. Think about every prediction. Climate change, maybe by now you thought the earth would split in half. I don't know what it is, but like go into detail and see how you can remember these. The ones especially that matter most are the ones where you felt you won't survive, right? Go into detail. And you have to do it at a level and expose it in a way where it's not embarrassing. Meaning why I say explain in detail is that the goal eventually is to explain beyond to yourself. If you can only sing in the shower, right? You know how sometimes we're great, like just vocalists or singers in the shower, usually when no one's around. That has zero like score of if you're a good singer or not. Like, it's like people who sing with the car windows closed in their car, like, I don't know if you're a good singer and neither do you, right? Meaning like the deal and reason for visualization and explaining in detail is actually not for yourself because you don't know how wackadoodle you are or not. You have to be able to explain to someone for them to say, oh, wow, that's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Wow. So obviously these things did not come true.
Yes.
But you must have really believed, obviously. And then you might be like, I'm so ashamed, I'm not going to do it. If you feel so ashamed you won't be able to do it, you're now triggering what we call ego. And if you have ego, you're still sick, right? So the goal is to get less sick, which is how do I do it in a way where I can be the driver of celebrating, leading in detail of my past negative predictions. That didn't come true. And I'm sure you're gonna be like, well, let me tell you the ones that did come true. I'm like, wait, that's not what we're doing here. We're talking about the ones that did not come true. And if you're an addict, I promise you, you probably have, I don't know, 10x or 100x more negative than positive, right? Or even if you say, well, like I had a lot and this one came true, I bet you there's at least 10 times more that you made that didn't come true, right? And if you really happen to be the one unicorn that happens to, find that, no, like 9 out of 10 come true, like we have a whole different class I can do on that, because I will bring you with me to Vegas, because if you are that good at predicting, then we can make money elsewhere besides doing work and leadership classes and stuff. Much easier way to make money. You just have to bet in the negative, which you can. Okay, so in the past, that exercise is not once. By the way, none of these things are once. It's routine, rep all the time. Now here's the key, going into the present. Everything is to go into the present, so you action, do something, right? You don't wallow. You action to get things better in your life. And that is the skill you're trying to build. Empowered here. So the reflection you have to get to is that, wait, you have experience. When you made a negative prediction, something bad had to be happening in your life, which meant like struggle, challenges were happening. But you made it through, which means you made it through that. And yes, it was difficult and maybe even terrible. But the fact that you're standing, the fact that you're vertical, you have to get to a place where you can observe your own strength. And your own strength, as in maybe you didn't make money. Maybe you didn't go and get a medal. Maybe you didn't go and innovate or create, but you didn't die. You didn't fall apart. And you know what happens when you go to the gym and you do anything painful? Just the act of getting through it creates strength. It builds muscle. You have to recognize, sorry, I'm very anal here, so just put a close bracket, but you have to realize the very act of you being here vertical, standing, having oxygen in your lungs, not being bankrupt, not being broke, means you survived, which simple act of surviving through difficulty, pain, builds muscle. And if you are able to see that, articulate that, and start to actually feel the strength you can feel through your own storytelling and narration of the past challenges that you made through, as a result, you are standing vertical today. That, done over and over again, builds empowerment. And then you're like, so can I start going into the future? Absolutely not. Because you have a addiction and an illness that until you get strong enough, you want to be able to build more reps under in 1 and 2 over here. Now, there was a point I was going to make, but I totally forget what it was, but it probably was very important. So we'll not mention it. I don't even know what it is, but yeah, so this notion of,
can I just say on the pessimistic side, you were talking about feeling, the group will feel like they're losing their mojo when they're doing it, right? That's kind of like the guttural,
Pessimists,
yucky feeling for the optimists will feel. The optimists you were saying, as they go into future negative things, they'll feel their mojo, right? I was just thinking for this side, for the pessimist side, as you were saying, articulate, feed the strength from your own storytelling, you'll build empowerment. Just trying to think of what.
like I say, empowerment as in once you do 1 and 2.
Yeah.
But
true.
what I've seen pessimists do, if you try to have them explain in detail their negative predictions in the past, they will act like you are like, I don't know, jabbing them below the belt, like rubbing shit in their face. Like they will act so viscerally defensive, right? To like, as if you're mocking and making fun of them. And that is almost the polar equivalence, right? Of what optimists feel when you start to go on predict negative things into the future.
Okay, interesting.
Like until you can own what makes you feel really just stupid.
Yeah.
Right?
Like a mockery.
Like, and until you can own the level of details that you made down to dates and bullets and nuances of what you thought would happen, right? The doomsday on all these things, until you can own that so that you can laugh about it more than anybody else, it's got a hold of you, right? If it makes you defensive, that means it's got a hold of you. The key here is you want to get a hold of these stories, which by the way are in your head, fed by yourself, you want to be the author of it. You want to be able to start to change your weekly routine authoring of these things. Now, I was going to say, so the litmus test of how you know you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing from both sides, the more you talk about whichever side you're working on, do you feel empowered or do you feel worse? If you find yourself feeling worse and worse, you have to be almost a scientist of your own mind and realize maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Now, I think to start, everyone's going to be like, well, the comfortable thing, the thing I'm used to doing is boom, right? Pop my Motrins first thing in the morning because it gets me ready for a tough day ahead, right? Welcome to being a pessimist, right? You've already predicted it's going to be a tough day ahead. So I'm taking proactive Motrin, right? Proactive preparation for the bad that's to come. And to dial that down, to be able to do this opposite, go and audit your own past, like doomsday negative predictions that you thought would end you financially, end you physically, and whatever relationship it might be. And the goal, remember, all of this, whether it's the optimist on future outlook of the negative to go to the present, or the pessimist to go into the past, right? Negative predictions to go in the present. The goal is to get fully engaged in the present so you can action to get right. Two quick pro tips. So by the way, this is called the hero's journey. So as a pessimist, throw out the Stockdale Paradox. The hero's journey is the person who can talk about the tough road to challenge and the rock bottom places you go. And at those rock bottom places, it felt like the next stop was going to be molten magma in the center of the earth, but it happened to actually be a valley. And then you started to climb up and you got back to sea level. That's all it is. It's just getting back to sea level. It's not even climbing Everest or climbing whatever. Like, it's literally going from what you thought would go into the center of the earth, like in a sinkhole. No, you came back to sea level. And the act of going through that journey has made you stronger. And if you can start to visualize not the physical muscle, but your mental muscle that you built for the simple act of going through that journey, you can get to a place of getting empowered. So we'll take questions after.
Okay, fine.
I'm gonna just give two pro tips, just because I love to add more stuff. Two pro tips. This actually is from the article. Never worry alone. We tend to ruminate and spiral down alone. We are really bad when it comes to our own minds of understanding what's good or bad. Am I doing the same thing or am I doing something different? We're really, really bad actually seeing that for ourselves. Another person can offer perspective. It's very hard to do on your own. Not that you can't through journaling, through chatting with, either ChatGPT, or we have a product called AI Coach at nextjump.com. It's all free. Try it, just email it. And it's nice to get something kind of like singing in the shower that you can do without anybody else seeing your own crazy thoughts and, having a companion that's a robot. So better than nothing. But the ability to actually find someone close to you that you can see on a consistent basis to drive perspective, very important to do. But here's the little nuance in it. The best, another person, we call them TPs, training partner. A training partner is someone who is also training, and they give you truth with the highest standards. What most of us get is someone who coddles us. And so I want you to recognize when someone coddles you, they are signaling their lack of belief in you, as in their lack of belief that you can take the truth. When they are coddling you, they believe you are not strong enough to handle the truth, right? Remember that movie, You Can't Handle the Truth? Like, that is exactly what they're doing. And so they put mental energy coming up with flowery words, coming up with shit sandwiches so that you can feel like amazing bread between the shit sandwich. They're putting in effort to make sure they can actually take the longer path to try to give you a little dosage of truth. And what they're doing in doing that often is doing a litmus test of, I wonder if they can take the truth. And as you indicate and signal that you cannot, they just believe even more that you cannot take the truth. You are not strong enough. And so their lack of belief in you is why people don't tell you the truth. You want to find the person. And I say the person because it's hard to find even one that will give you the truth in near real time, unfiltered, high standards. And why? Not because they're an asshole, not because they get high and get off on, bullying people with the truth. No, because they believe you can take the truth because that's how you get better. So, pro tip is another person, but realize what you want to get to is the training part of the TP that can give you truth, high standards, really fast, because they can't stand one more day where you don't have the truth. Okay, right? Pro tip number 2. This one's kind of complicated, but I think it's a good one. Going into this topic, I don't know if you're familiar with this notion of future regrets. So I was going to put one more data point underneath
This
it.
is the last slide.
That is the last slide. Yep. Future regret. If you can master the skills to actually generate future regret.
Actually, this makes me think this phrase, actually, because Charlie's wife told me, Megan, I don't think you're negative. I think you're just a worrier. I said, well, thank you. What's the difference? But worrying, so I told her, Charlie and I have been talking a lot about, there's a difference between worry and good worry. There is a good worry. Is this a good worry, future regret, if you then play it?
Yes.
Okay.
This takes skills, and this is why it's a pro tip, high level. Future regret. If you can visualize into the future and then imagine in a level of detail the regret you will feel, right? Because you did not do something sooner. A lot of people who get cancer and whatnot, they regret not being healthier sooner in their life. A lot of people who fall down and don't have enough muscle and the bones are weak, they regret. There's a lot of things in the physical side, but there's also a lot of things that you should learn to build on the mental side. A lot of things, whether it's a relationship, right? I'm sure you have that regret of the person you saw and you're like, God, if I just said hello, maybe it would be together now, or whatever it might be. Future regrets. If you imagine it in a level of detail, right? I don't know why the thought that comes to mind is I love food, so I think about buffets. You ever go to a buffet and see the one thing that's almost gone and you're not sure if they're going to come back with it? And so you imagine the future regret coming back around with your second plate and there's no more, right? Meaning, as an example, if you are able to go into a level of detail and imagine future regret, it will give you the courage, the empowerment in the present time. We created this scoring mechanism for decision making. Dev GPS 4s, what we labeled speed and bold. The ability to take action, not only with speed, but also boldly. How many of us move slowly and in a very diluted way, just in case there's better ideas? That's the more typical. But the reason why you would actually move quick and you would take a bold shot is because you don't want future regret. Meaning future regret quickly becomes present regret, past regret. Instead of spending all your energy regretting in the past and something you can't change, there's actually a muscle, a leadership skill to be able to regret into the future and to make sure that does not happen. I'd rather take a shot right now to make sure that doesn't happen than let my life go into autopilot. And when that happens, feel like, God damn it, I knew it. I should have done something. I had a hunch. We do that a lot. And so this is a skill. It's a learned muscle. And I think it's a brilliant skill when it comes to leadership. So that's the pro stuff. So we don't have to touch that. Good. All right.
No, but I like that because this focus of good worry, I've been grappling with for years. Because I think a future prediction of doom or gloom, which I know I overdo as a pessimist, but I always say, but there's value, because if you could see around the corner and you're thinking, I don't want that to happen, you'll change something now. You'll do something now.
And the degree of how fast you do it and how
Yeah.
boldly you do it is a signal of your future regret.
Right.
If your future regret is very big and strong and narrated in a very depthful, meaningful way, you'll see those people move with a very different level of speed and boldness.
Right. Right.
When they move meekly.
Right, then
right?
if you're not actioning on that worry, then you're obviously not worried enough, right? The ones you're really worried about, which is
Right.
the future regret, the good worry, I've labeled it as good worry. You would be moving fast and doing stuff to change it now, or else you're not, right? Or else you're really not worried about it.
So I put it in small slide mode. I'm happy to jump into any slide you want, but we can unmute. I didn't get a chance to read the chat. Our moderators tend not to read the chat either, but anybody who wants to, you can put it in the chat if you want. You can just or unmute. love to help take any questions, any thoughts, reactions. It's good to be back.
Yeah, Craig, talk to us. We haven't heard your voice in a while. What's happening? Unmute, talk to us.
Hey,
Hi.
so what's happening? I left the government. So and I will be officially retired at the end of this month and deciding on that future regret. What's that next transition?
Congratulations, though.
Thanks.
You have left the safety of the government job.
Well, I don't know how safe it is anymore, but
As an optimist, I know you're an optimist, but I guess that makes sense. Did this resonate for you?
yeah, no, absolutely. It did. I mean, I had a couple notes here. So Charlie said the mind is the most important thing to change, right? And so I said, I think that's kind of simplified because you made an allusion to the microbiome. So I think it's a balance between what you establish as a healthy, right, being that allows you to maximize that mental approach. So I think there's a little more than just saying that the mind is the most important thing, but it is the thing that you have to change. You have to change your mental approach and come past that. There's a book, you were mentioning Vegas, Charlie, called The Biggest Challenge. And this lady is a psychologist from MIT. And so they use the game of poker to really evaluate how much of your life are you actually in control of. And then so it ties into this very theme that you're talking about, is that there's not a whole lot you're in control of, but how you manage it, how you react to it. So right, the essence of this discussion is once you acknowledge something, then you can improve upon that. And so once you realize you're not in control of everything, then you can start calming down and saying, okay, now what am I going to do? I find myself in this situation, but I have the skills or the capabilities to start putting that plan together. And the other thing that I wrote,
Annie Duke, is that what it is? Annie Duke, no?
I
Poker woman?
I think so. I think so. It's downstairs, so I can't just go grab it. Um, and then when we're talking about ask or the optimist and thinking about the future and stuff, those consequential things, it's very tied into program management or project management, right? What are you evaluating? You're evaluating the risk. And you're not just saying, well, what is the risk? Well, what are those things that I can mitigate those risks? So, so I think that there's a great analogy there because people call me an optimist, but they also, you were talking about if you were to do a survey, the survey would come back as I'm very calm, because the reality is that's great, shit's happening, but what are you going to do about it? Like, what steps are we going to take? What can we take? What are our options to go forward? So, yeah, so those were some of the notes that I was taking as you were talking, and I thought the monkey bar was a great analogy. My granddaughter will go and go till her hands bleed because she's gonna get across that thing. So yeah, whereas some other kids are like, well, that's not happening today.
So it's the book you mentioned, I guess, The Biggest Challenge, The Earth is Dying, by Ray Hall. All right? Unless I got the wrong one.
No, if you want to go on to talk with someone, I'll go grab it. I'll tell you what it is.
I think, Tara, you had a question. So is iteration part of the process for either side? Is iteration part of the process for either side of empowerment? You can unmute, Terry.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about how to go about, I'm on the optimistic side. And here's, what I'm dealing with is I just was laid off a few weeks ago. So I'm trying to deal with how it went in the past, not get pessimistic, but be, optimistic and knowing I've gotten through it before. It's happened before. And we're just in the times of people and government decisions that affect me and my company. And so, I just was wondering if you iterate between those sides, those two, not the third one, for optimistic, I guess is what I was looking at.
So, Terry, I'm going to share the screen so you can just go back to it.
Okay.
So here's the way I look at what you're explaining. Like, just-
Mhm.
this thing. So what's interesting about, in this situation, you got laid off and yes, in the past, you made it through, which is like the
Yeah.
instant
Yeah.
thing is to go back to
Yeah.
believing that the past will now repeat.
Right.
And that's what optimists tend to do. If I succeeded before, it's gotta, and there's a part where in your own mind, in your own body, I think we all know nothing is ever that predictable. Life is not that much of a rhyme, or not rhyme, but like a mirror of the exact same things in the past happened. It might be similar, it might have similarities, but it's never the same. Otherwise, life would be a lot easier, right? It's like playing the same level over and over again. That's not the case. And even for an optimist, you know that deep down. And so the exercise of looking into the future and saying, okay, what happens if I am unable to like see a positive future, but a negative future, which will make you then analyze not only your bank account, your current expense structure, it will analyze your current basis, and to be able to go through that hard reality of looking in the future and seeing this might take much longer, right? How much runway do I have? What are all the details? And you go through it, and we've done this exercise. I call it a plan A versus a plan Z. Plan A as an optimist is that you're going to get a job and everything is just a little temporary blip and you'll be right back on the horse. Plan Z, which by the way has, A to Z is 26, right?
Yeah.
26 different letters, right? So 24
Yes.
other possibilities in between. Plan Z, which is, I like calling it Plan Z because as an optimist, I'm saying all hell freezes over, right? So the world's gone to hell in the window that I'm unemployed. And so I'm not able to find employment. That's my plan Z. Go in and make plan Z come alive. It is simply a prediction, a plan in a level of detail, which makes you look at and start puzzling, what does the really bad scenario look like? And
Okay.
the exercise itself is painful. It can feel depressing. And if you do it, you might feel like you worry other people, but you will see that as you go into it, it will empower you at some point. And because knowing is better than not knowing. Knowing in detail, being able to explain it. Like at some point you might feel hives and you might feel that you'll see as you do it, like you'll be like, okay, like it's far worse. The version in your mind, which has a lot of holes, a lot of unknowns, and a lot of moving variables that when you start to realize there are moving variables, but maybe not as many as you might think. There are certain things, and just knowing, it's amazing. Like the resilience of a human being of what they can do to survive longer if they know the details. When you don't know the
Yes.
details, literally time passing is literally burning cash. It's burning fuel.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
notion of doing that, and then with that plan, once again, I can see it like parked next to me, focus on winning. And you'll see the focus on winning is what your optimist skill will naturally have. But
Yes.
the difficult part will be doing number one and keeping it in your sight as you charge forward on the reality of now trying to do better than where you are now. And so
Awesome. Awesome.
that
Yeah.
plan-
Here's the thing though. It's hard when the times are way different now versus maybe 8 or 9 years ago when I was laid off, if that makes sense. And
Yes.
I see, my my resume is going through a robot or whatever it is that looks at it to even be pulled up to be considered part of the short list. And so then I'm like, how am I going to get
Yeah.
this to
Yes.
even be pulled? Because I'm putting truth on my resume, right? I'm putting truth. Here's what
Totally.
I've done. But then it doesn't match up. And there's tools, yes, to get it to match up. But anyway, it's just, that's what I'm kind of dealing with. I know, go ahead.
No, but you know what's interesting, Terry? Like, this is a very common thing. You're already spending a lot of time in number two, right?
Yeah.
Number two is actioning in the present, updating my resume,
Yes.
thinking of how to
Yes.
get it out.
Yes.
And I am
Yes.
saying number two is more empowered once you do number one.
Okay. So
Once you
the
do
order
number
is,
one,
yes. Gotcha. Okay.
this may take much longer. And this is
Gotcha.
the realistic part. You might say, I never am employed. So that's where the unrealistic side comes in. That likely is not true. But I don't know how realistic it is, how long It might be 6 months, it might be a year, it might
Yeah.
be 2 years. I don't know what it is, but it will force you to start to look at your resources, your cash flow,
Yeah.
your expense bases. It will start to
Yes.
make you think of, okay, if it takes long, and you might even look at it in 6-month increments, saying,
Yeah.
okay, if there's like 6 months is part one, but then if it's another 6 months, maybe that's part two. If it's another 6 months,
Okay.
it's part three. You might look at it in increments and realize in a gated fashion, if the plan pushes towards part three, I need to find a way to notch down certain things. And, like there are all these elements where you start to put that together. And I cannot tell you how empowering that is. People who
Okay.
have not done it think it's so depressing and negative. But anybody who has ever fought their way out of rock bottom when everyone, including yourself, felt you will not make it, this is the very thing that gives you power. It gives you, like, you can feel your legs underneath the rock bottom and you will kick off from there, but you can't until you know what that rock bottom looks like. And sometimes that rock bottom is a gated rock bottom, right? And maybe 6-month
Yes.
increments is good enough. But as you make that plan, I cannot tell you, as you try to now figure out how to navigate this new uncertain resume environment, bot driven and everything, how difficult and depressing that will be. But if
Yeah.
you are feeling pretty good, mentally lighter of the downside, you have 10x the likelihood of success in trying to navigate this difficult situation. But if that downside is suppressed and becoming a demon that's growing and almost mocking you on the side, you will see that depression will multiply so rapidly. You will not find the toughness to figure things out.
Excellent.
It's a
Thank
very
you so much.
counterintuitive thing.
So counterintuitive. You're saying the right.
I
the
think
right
that's what
mindset.
the iteration piece. That's, I guess, what I was thinking. You get the pessimism coming in, but yet I'm optimistic. So this is so helpful. Thank you.
And what happens is this, so absolutely iteration tends to be one of the most important things, but doing the same thing over and over again, to me, is not iteration. It's just, it's what they call insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. Most people literally just have insanity. They don't have iteration. Now they say, I did something a little different. I'm like, no, it's practically the same thing. And you show it to someone and imagine, and the best way to litmus test it is to go to someone and saying, hey, I've been failing, so I did something dramatically different, as in I iterated. Can I show you what I did last time versus this time? And watch their facial reaction. If they have a, wow, that's a different approach, maybe you iterated.
Yeah.
But if they have isn't that pretty much the same thing? Or they might ask you so what exactly did you do different? Which is their coddle, polite way to say, I can't give you the truth, but I'm trying to see what you mean by iteration. Most people do not iterate. To be able to iterate, you have to have the mental strength, the mental agility to literally see a plan A to a plan Z, to be able to explore the world of possibilities and then say, I've never tried to go in that direction. What would a shot there look like? That's iteration. To have that kind of experimental mindset and iteration, you have to first make sure you're going to be okay, which is why that negative future plan comes first. So keep us updated, but I feel I found it's amazingly empowering if you can rep this. The other side is amazingly defeating over time consistently, and you keep wondering, why is it not turned the corner? And that's literally what degenerate gamblers do in casinos, right? It's bound to work out, right? I failed this many times in a row, 9 in a row, 10's got to work out. No, you can fail 100 in a row because you're doing the same thing.
No, it's yeah, sorry, it's interesting, because I wanted to go into a different topic,
Sorry.
but we could do it
No,
after
no,
the
no, no,
class.
no,
No, I was
do
just
it.
thinking about, sorry, I'm just
Good.
thinking about like optimists and a pessimist, say Tom and Laura are different, you and I are different, so
Sure.
just trying to think of now. But it's a little complicated, right? Because it's like when I just heard you say, Terry, when you started with the whole, like, I've been through this before, like, almost like this feeling of I will prevail. I was like, oh my God. Wow, Terry, great. I'm thinking that's what I need to be able to say to myself, right? But for Terry, that's not what you're saying. That's not what she needs right now. So yeah, and it just made me think about, like, as partners and training partners or thinking partners or whatever, as team, like where this stuff can
So-
be complementary and where it can be
So what's interesting, by the way, on teams in general, no matter what happens, if you're teamed with the same person over enough
Yeah.
difficulty,
Yes.
both people adjust.
Right.
And you adjust to each other. This is why if you watch children and siblings, they're not like, you're like, oh my God, how do the same parents create such different kids? They're adjusting to each other.
Yeah.
Right? The one person who's like, say the older one's reckless and constantly getting hurt, and you're wondering why the second one is so cautious.
Yeah.
They've watched firsthand,
Makes
constantly
sense.
getting hurt. So they're overly cautious.
Totally.
Like there are elements where you have to realize our natural instinct
Yes.
is to adjust to truth,
Yes.
to feedback in front of you. And oftentimes the feedback might not be direct. You're watching somebody else get feedback and it makes you adjust.
Yes. That's it.
So every
Direct.
team over time adjusts to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Right.
a very insightful but powerful concept.
Yeah.
So like,
Good point. It's a
once you
excellent point.
recognize that, it is not about the labels, it's not about how
Yeah.
you were born, optimist or
Right.
born this. No, it's about the fact that the longer you've gone through challenges,
Yeah.
there is an adjustment that occurred, and
Yeah.
now your default tends to be this way.
Mm-hmm.
But if both teammates recognize their imbalance, if both teammates are constantly training, if both teammates have the agility to even swap roles every now and then, oh my God, that's like, that's having umpteenth more tools in your toolkit.
Yeah.
And so that's the place you want to get to.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, you said both teammates have agility. What did you say right before that? Both teammates, sorry, you just said something now. I have like examples in my head, so my mind is spinning on it. No, not ones that I want to share here,
Get
but.
into like a rut where, okay, I'm always the pessimist person, so.
Well, like I like what you said, if we have the agility where, you could be pessimistic on something that I feel like I can flip to being an optimist, right?
Of
Like,
course you can.
right, of course I
Every
can, and I
human being
will,
can.
right? Because I think naturally, I don't like the feeling of when, like, on one hand, I'm thinking, can you be pessimistic on this? Because I'm worried about it, and I'd like for you to join my side.
Ooh, sounds like, by the way,
Get
sounds.
there now,
sorry, Sounds
you
like
know?
helplessness, no? Can you be, because I can't be unless you
I can't
are.
hold this part of the podium any longer by
Once
myself.
again, that's literally helplessness.
Look at ChatGPT.
No, helplessness literally is,
What?
what?
Opposite of a degenerate gambler is a hypochondriac.
Hypochondriac.
My God, we talked about this. I'm such a.
Degenerate gambler.
I know, hypochondriac. But I don't get it. So you said to me last week, I don't get that.
What?
Why if I'm a
Because you're always
Why?
seeing loss even when there is none.
seeing loss?
Seeing loss.
You
even
say
when there's-
hypochondriac is when you're worried about getting sick.
But it's the same idea though.
But I'm also like, what's the word, superstitious? My dad had said that last week. He's superstitious. I am.
But by the way.
So sometimes by
on
thinking
the
about things
negative.
that, no,
On the
no,
negative.
but you know what came up during the hero's journey when you were talking about it? Because when we worked on the hero's journey, when Charlie mapped this out, I was like, this is Stockdale and that's hero's journey. They're different. This new framework. And I was like, just trying to think, what is it making me think of? The optimist is Stockdale, and to me, the pessimist needs hero's journey. And it's why I like Stockdale better than I like hero's journey. Because I've struggled with the idea of let me go through all the pain I've gone through to remind myself I survived, I'm here, I'm standing. Because I believe I'm jinxing myself that it will not work out in the future. And by saying I'm strong and I feel empowered and I can do it, look what I've been through, is like saying, Satan, come down and strike me. How could you say that? You idiot, is how I feel. I feel terrified to say that. I won't say it out loud. And the more a coach like a Charlie tells me to do that, the more I have like a, how dare you? Don't you do that? You're jinxing me, you're jinxing us. Like, don't you see what you're doing? That is toxic. Like, that's predicting goodness, and like, that's not how the world works. And so like, I have such a visceral desire, don't do that in front of me. Don't do it in front of me. And without question, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna strike myself down. So that's why I cringe when I think about doing the exercise, despite it's not like I won't have moments where I think like I'm here, I'm surviving, look what I've been through, but to celebrate it and go into detail on it and to do it every day as a repeated thing terrifies me. Every day. Do it every day. To come in empowered, if you want to win and you want to succeed every day, you're going to need everything. You're going to need to iterate, and you're going to need to feel empowered. You need to put your ego aside. You need to be able to fail. You need to look stupid. So it's going to be a daily thing. If it's not daily, then you can't iterate every day. And then you're lying to yourself saying, well, we're iterating. You're not iterating. You're not. If you're not coming in empowered with a different point of view, it's not iteration. And the only way you're going to get there is if you change your default of how you've been. Because if you're not changing you and your default, you will not be iterating. You can't. You are connected to the iteration and the innovation. It's you. It's not, so otherwise you're not doing it, right?
So
But that's why I'm scared, 'cause I'm like, God,
I
like, this is
have,
like
I have like so many things to
terrifying.
cover the topic. So like without triggering any immune, hopefully, but
That's okay.
first thing is this, the constant battle and trade-off for most of us is
Yeah.
ego versus mission.
Totally.
Okay, like,
Yeah.
and I know that kind of sounds so generic, it's ego versus mission.
Totally.
Simply how I look versus like, do you want to win? Do you want to get whatever it is important to get done? And when we feel unable, or when we feel maybe I don't want, or when we feel whatever it is you feel, it's so much safer to pick ego.
Yeah.
Ego being, okay, you know what, by default, I'm just gonna preserve my brand and how I look. So we don't even realize how often and how that is our go-to default, which is I am gonna pick ego, and before you know it, it's, hell will freeze over before I sacrifice ego. That comes first. Now let's talk about what we're trying to get done. And it's such a hidden thing.
Yeah.
But so what you build with reps and with practice, that's very difficult, is a proactive desire to serve and sacrifice my own ego so that I can get to a place of learning how to get mission success. Doesn't matter what the mission is. That notion of what Ray Dalio said, Jeff Bezos said, exact same thing, right? If you can't tolerate being wrong, wrong would be a synonym for if you can't tolerate being a fool, looking like an idiot, sounding like a hothead, sounding like, like you have no brain cells, sounding like you haven't even gone to school, sounding like you're a complete bigot, whatever that word you want to add is, if you can't tolerate people judging you, seeing you seeing yourself that way, you can't learn. And if you can't learn, same as not growing, you will be miserable and others will feel miserable around you. It will not stop. And so the only way to move and break that thing is not to say, my ego's so bruised, you gotta, just kind of, how can I do it with ego? You have to literally serve it up yourself. Serve your own ego on a platter to be chopped, and your willingness to repeatedly fail, look like a fool, because that's less important than figuring out how to get to the right place, which takes time. So that's the trade-off that most people won't make.
Yeah.
And it's so hidden and so silent. So that's the first part. The second part is the whole helplessness. This is on video, so you can play it back, which is great. You can watch and listen for the little cues
Doing this
of
for you
how
guys.
much of your own story,
Yeah.
your own decision of what your mind will do is connected to somebody else giving you permission, reaction. Only if you were positive can I be negative. Only if you're negative, I can be positive. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, you get to do whatever you want. You get to inject whatever story, break whatever pattern, regardless of somebody else. But if you are busy narrating your life as I can't do that unless someone does that, that's called helplessness. Helplessness in that I am unable to influence, right, the outcome unless someone else does something, right? Everything I do is contingent. Everything I think is contingent on someone else doing something.
Yeah.
That by definition is helplessness. That by definition is low agency. Empowerment is the opposite. Despite you, despite the hurricanes, or despite the challenges, despite the president wrecking this, or despite climate change or whatever it is, I'm gonna make progress. That's empowerment, right? That's empowerment. And the more you go at difficult stuff, like physical workouts,
Yeah.
you build muscle. Simple act of even going through the monkey bar and failing, the longer they tried, they got stronger. So that's empowerment versus helplessness. And what I have a almost allergic reaction to is nobody's entitled to empowerment. You earn empowerment. You have to put in the reps. You have to put in the consistent routine and effort, and you will earn empowerment one day. But do not think that you deserve empowerment, that you should be empowered just because it's positive and you read a book or a movie or whatever it is. No, you earn empowerment. And right now, most of us haven't earned it, haven't built it into my weekly consistent routine. If you are investing in empowerment, like the kid on the monkey bar, every single day, and the only reason they're not on is because they need maybe a day of recovery, you do that consistently, you will one day feel empowerment. Because when things are difficult, and when you see everyone else around says, can't be done, won't do it, and you remember, the old version of me wouldn't even have tried. That's called empowerment. Doesn't mean it'll work out, but it means that despite everyone saying it's impossible, you're like, no, I don't think so. I think it's possible. Let me take a shot. Let me take a shot. And you come up with creative ways, and that not giving up impossibility effort, that's empowerment. And empowerment alone is not enough to win, but it is an absolute skill. And having empowerment as a skill increases the chance of you potentially winning way higher than the default muscle of helplessness. So, Annie,
Well,
we will leave it at that.
yeah,
All right.
sounds like a plan.
It's good seeing you guys.
Yeah,
I hope you have a good week.
Yeah.
That would, and if you want, by the way, you can email us at megachart@nextjump.com if you want to continue conversations, have questions and follow-ups. I'm a geek for this stuff. I love this stuff. So, and I feel like we're not even close to figure it out, the important pieces. So, we are aggressively going around. In fact, I have a list of people I'm trying to figure out what's wrong with work and everyone and broken. And so I was telling Megan, I have a list of people to go for a half day, just sit and just observe them working and thinking all day. There's an artist, there's a random manager, a random new employee. I want to go sit. My son Jackson's in high school. I'm going to ask the teachers if I can just sit and go to school with him for half a day. I want to see what they do.
you're gonna be so popular. That's good.
But no, there's a part where I believe there's a lot still missing, and it's in the nuances that I don't know how and where it's going wrong, the forks, but we'll figure it out, just a matter of when. But I'm hoping sooner than later, before Christmas. I'm gonna try to figure it out, so.
Good prediction. He's allowed to make them because he's an optimist.
And so you have it in recording, and whoever recorded this can play it back saying, you idiot, remember you said before Christmas? I didn't say what year, but anyways, you guys
Good
have a
to
good
see you
week.
too, Craig. We'll see you next week, you guys.